All right, this is going to be another video about a book. The book I want to talk about is called Disintegration, and the author's name is Andrei Martyanov. Martyanov actually has written a number of different books kind of talking about aspects of the decline of the United States, and he's an interesting author. So this particular book, Disintegration is the title, but the subtitle is Indicators of the Coming American Collapse. So there you go. That's that's what this book is about. Now, there's a few things I want to talk about in this video. First of all, we'll talk about the book, but then I also want to talk about why it's important to read bearish literature and particularly kind of understand historical cycles and their implications. And then secondly, though, not to get too attached to kind of the perma-bearishness or the utter sort of the pessimism, basically, of ingesting too much of this literature, right? So you have to kind of walk a fine line, like not too high, not too low, just like with investing. And because this will have implications for your and your family's capital, basically. So the whole idea here is to prepare ourselves and understand kind of the truth about what things are going, how things are going, and understand what's ugly about it, but also kind of make sure that we remain kind of stoical, or in some cases even optimistic about what opportunities this might offer to us, or at least things that we can do in reaction to be prepared regardless of what the situation is. All right, so long-winded way of kind of describing the ideas of this post. But this particular book, and actually I'll probably read some other things by Martyanov as well. I'm going to link to a book review I wrote about Disintegration on my book review blog, and I'll also put in there a link to Amazon that'll be an affiliate link. So if you decide to buy this book, you can click it and support this channel with a small affiliate fee. It'll be no extra cost to you using Amazon's affiliate program. So, but first of all, basically, this author, he has an interesting background. So he was his youth, or his early adulthood, was spent during the collapse of the Soviet Union, the 1990s. Obviously, the Soviet Union as a geopolitical entity started to break apart, but then during the 1990s, this country had a whole, or the different sub-states as well, had all kinds of problems with mafia activity. There was sort of a rushed privatization of assets, and quite a bit of wealth was concentrated in the hands of certain oligarchs. It was ugly on a lot of levels, and then, of course, the ruble had its collapse in the late 1990s, and Russia actually defaulted on its debt. So you had a whole arc of kind of a slow-motion catastrophe on some level, and there was a lot of inflation, and just it was quite difficult, very, very difficult decade for that political entity. And this author, of course, these were formative years for him. And at the same time, he was spending time in the United States, and now I believe he lives here. And so he is actually drawing quite a few parallels between that era and what he's seeing in the United States in various analogies. And he discusses the military position of the United States, different geopolitical positionings, and obviously economic activity, and just also many kind of disturbing examples of clown world, basically, of sort of the fourth turning or the lack of effectiveness of many institutions in the United States. Which reminds me, if you haven't read The Fourth Turning, that by Neil Howe, that is another book. There's actually a more recent version of this book called The Fourth Turning is Here. Both of those books are also very much worth reading. Okay, so I recommend Disintegration by Andrei Martyanov. Very, very helpful book. And if he has if I end up reading other books by him that I think are worth reading, I'll bring them to your attention as well. And the book's not that long, 200 pages. You can read it in a week and chew over some of the things he's talking about. Okay, that's about the book. Now, how do we as investors react to something that quite frankly is incredibly bearish, right? And you think about the decline of your own country, right? And you think about, okay, what would I do as an investor? And again, this is where you want to make sure that you're stoical, that you're emotionally kind of not too high, not too low when it comes to concepts like this. And you think about a decline of a country or of a major empire can take a very long time. If you look back through history, I mean, it took centuries for Rome really to decline. And depending on how you define Rome, if you define Rome by, say, the Eastern Roman Empire, say the Constantinople element of Rome, it didn't decline for 1,000 years, right? Obviously, there was a sort of a golden era of democracy in Rome, but even after that ended, you had many centuries of a quite stable empire. So, that might be the roadmap for the United States. Of course, we're not going to know. I'd also draw your attention to something like the transition of primacy between England and the United States. Now remember, England, or the UK, was basically the dominant state or the dominant empire globally in, say, much of the 19th century. And it went through its sort of decline as the United States passed it, right, in the late 19th century, early 20th century. Obviously, World War I was kind of a major catalyst to have a flippening between the United States and England. And I guess it's worth thinking about, okay, so, the United States, we're sort of, as a unit, kind of appalled by the idea of not being number one, right, as China passes us. But, think about it. This happened to England, and it's not like the minute the U.S. passed England, the pound went to zero and there were breadlines in England. It wasn't like that at all, right? England continued as a very functional country, very functional economy for a very long time after that. And so I think this is another lens through which you can kind of look at a transition of primacy, or transition of one empire or one political structure which passes another one, right? And of course, what am I talking about? I'm talking about China and India. And India inevitably passing the United States in GDP, in geopolitical importance, etc. So, I think the most important thing is to make sure you're familiar with sort of the decline literature that's out there and understand, how to think about that. But by the same token, don't sell all your stocks and buy, toilet paper and canned goods, right? You kind of want to just be thinking in terms of opportunity, thinking in terms of, how might I position myself to benefit from this geopolitical change, which is going to happen whether I like it or not, right? And it might mean that there are certain bets that you might make or certain decisions you might make, but I wouldn't make radical changes or, get too upset about it. You have to kind of understand that I'm going to play my small role in this grand theater, geopolitically speaking. But at the end of the day, you want to protect your own capital and not make rash decisions or radical decisions. So these are kind of the themes that struck me from this book, but definitely recommend Disintegration by Andrei Martyanov. Quite a good book, not a very long book, and it will kind of give you all you need to know to think about kind of aspects of the decline of the United States. Okay, so as always, I hope this video is helpful, and thank you for watching.